So as you guys are studying the scriptures with people and you come to the bad news of the gospel, people's sin, and ultimately how that's connected to Jesus' death on a cross, right? That God would require judgment to remain righteous, to punish wickedness. He kills his son on the cross. And as you read through the cross narrative, the crucifixion narrative, what for you has been really helpful to connect your personal sin to the death of Jesus? What helped you connect emotionally and spiritually and otherwise your own sin to the death that Jesus bore on the cross?
I think it took me a while to make that connection because I had built this kingdom for myself in which I was a very good person. And it was this sort of pseudo, like I like God's blessings. I like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. I want those things, but I wanted them in my own way and on my own terms. And so I had really convinced myself for a long time that I was so good and that I was doing God's will. And it took me a really long time to get from that to, like, when I read in Colossians 2 that I was dead in my sins and the uncircumcision of my flesh, and that I needed God to really make me alive. It was just this sort of half-life that I was trying to create for myself. And to really, like you said, like, we have to really understand the bad news before the good news is good. And that's what it took for me, was really wrestling with who I am before God and my need for him. I don't just need him to improve me a little bit and dust off the rough edges, but that I needed to be raised from the dead. And that takes a miracle. Nobody can raise anybody from the dead except God.
So let me tease that out some more. So when you say that you're wrestling with God to kind of like embrace that and believe that to be true of you, what was helpful in your wrestling match? What helped you to come to the place of conviction where you really believed that you needed to be raised from the dead?
Well, I think experiencing the effects of my own sin to where I couldn't justify it anymore. Like, I saw how it was hurting the people around me and myself, and there was just no longer any excuse for it. So really coming to face with, despite my best efforts to be a good girl, at how much of a mess I was making of my life and my relationships. And then the fact that someone died for me, like the immense cost of that gave it a seriousness that you just can't. If you really believe Jesus died for you, then you can't get around it. You know?
Well, and not only that you really believe Jesus died for you, but that you believe Jesus died for you, a sinner. Like, I'm reminded of Paul's word, who said, very rarely will someone die for a good man, right? And the idea is that, like, we can understand giving up our life for someone that we love and someone that we think is good and worthy of respect and we'll lay down our, but very rarely, right? That's what makes the cross so unique, is that while we were still sinners, Christ died for the ungodly. Like, when you still needed to be raised from the dead, not just dusted off, that's when Christ died for you. And that connection of not just did he die for me, but he died for me when I'm like this is transformative. What has your experience been as you have connected for yourself your own wickedness and wretchedness and rebellion before a holy and righteous God, and his willingness to take the initiation and die on your behalf, even when you cared not? What has helped you in your wrestling match to build that conviction and to be transformed by that gospel?
I think what's interesting is that as she approached it as the good girl, trying to be the good girl, I did not approach trying to be the good girl.
You were trying to be good? No way. Anyways.
I was trying to get mine, but what was complicated about coming to grips, like, okay, so the good news is someone died for me. That's like, seemed backwards.
Right.
and then he was raised again. How do I connect that? You know? And I struggled until I understood it. Like, the good news simplified for me being that, hey, James, you stand, like, I understood, like, courts, like judges, and like me, the criminal, and like, hey, I broke some laws and now there's a consequence to pay, you know, and I need to pay it because, dude, you're straight guilty. So when I knew, okay, wow, Bible shows me I'm guilty, and here's my list of like a mile long. I knew I have no chance, but that there's a consequence for my action. And Jesus loves me so much. He's like, James, I'm gonna take your consequence of death. So
how did that make you feel when you first really heard that and learned about that and wrestled with that?
I think trying to like come to grips that the bad choices that I made, that the consequence is death.
Mm.
You know, like, everybody does this stuff though, right? You know? So, but why does the consequence have to be death?
Right.
Why can't it be like, go into the
community service? Why can't I just get a
community
community service and a fine, sir?
Yeah. And so God's ways are different than mine. Like, I always, on everything, my whole worldview just has to change on like what that means. And so it just had to challenge my thinking.
So as you're looking to make disciples, right? And you're trying to present them with the gospel, the good news of the cross and the resurrection, what are some things that you're trying to impart? What are some things that you would want to pass along from your faith and your convictions about the cross and the resurrection to make other disciples of Jesus?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. We'll cut all the pause out, so just take your time. What would you want to pass along to others to make disciples about the cross and resurrection? In other words, what conviction do you have about the cross and resurrection that you would want to impart to others, and why? You know, maybe what passages would you look at? What would you want them to think about or question or know? Like, how would you want to pass along your convictions about the cross and resurrection? How might you do that?
I mean, the thing that helped me, and I think the thing that helps a lot of other people, is knowing what crucifixion is. And I like to simplify things because I all this stuff is really complicated if I try to think all of it all at once. So I try to compartmentalize it in like the amount of brokenness I have over my sin is going to be the amount of gratitude I have for Jesus' sacrifice. And if I know the depth of Jesus' sacrifice, then I will be that much more grateful for his resurrection and the resurrection of my life as well, whenever that applies to me. And so when it comes to the cross is the most recognizable symbol, but I have no idea what it means most of the time when I see it everywhere. Even if there's like a little carving of Jesus crucified on it, it means so little to me personally. But when there's that connection of the sin to Jesus' suffering and the personalization of I did that to the Son of God who loved me, and then more so that I didn't have to endure that, that is what I try my best to impart onto anybody else, that these things that you did, it matters to the extent that it caused the Son of God to die for that, so that you don't have to. And typically, whenever a person like connects with that, it's a level of humility and, oh, I don't deserve that. And I think that's the proper reaction. And I really try to help people get there.
It's like an oh snap moment, you know, like, oh man, there's something that clicks of like, wow, this is way more, you know, weighty than I had imagined. Yeah. Let me ask a different question. What are you most excited about for the resurrection?
I just want to be with God. Like it's so simple, but that's just over my entire time from when someone first sat down and was like, hey, this is the Bible, because I didn't know. I didn't come from a religious background or family. And then over my time, like the time period of me evaluating my life based on the scriptures and building faith and understanding what the heck a relationship with God even means, like my sole desire was just to be with him and the promise that he wants a relationship with me, and then that would come in the future was my sole motivation.
That's great. What else? What else are you excited about for the resurrection?
I think it's like a new beginning. To have a resurrection, somebody has to die. So when you're dead to sin, God raised you up from the dead to a new life. So if you receive that, when you accept that, then you know that you have to show the truth of it by living a new life. And that is what God gives in his promise.
Yes.
So without to be resurrected, you have to die first. And then when you get resurrected, you have to show and live a new life for that.
Right. I think for me, that's something that I'm so excited about with the resurrection and am excited about. And that's the tension, right? It's already, but not yet. That we've already been raised to newness of life, right? As it talks about in Romans 6, when we're in Christ. But also, there will be a day when all things are made new, when the new heaven and the new earth are remade and creation is remade. And I'm excited about that part of the resurrection. Like this part of the resurrection already, I understand a little bit because I get to experience it. I get to experience the joy and freedom and patience and peace and love of life in the spirit. But I'm like, what's it going to be like one day when there's no more death, no more decay, no more sorrow? You know, we're going to get to be a part of some cosmic venture with God for the rest of time, perfectly co-creating with him. Wow.
Yeah, I think another thing that I think about too is just life's hard, you know, and I've also experienced a lot of death in my life, you know, like watching best friends pass away, going to the hospital young, you know, and then just when, you know, life's a train wreck. And sometimes I meet other folks where life's a train wreck and they're coming out of really hard times, like out of rehab. And you're like, dude, like this is hard, man. And so the message of the resurrection is hope. Like hope when you don't see any hope. Blue skies when everything is gray, and not like happy clappy and rainbows and sunshine.
Not like a fabricated fake it till you make it.
Like just man, like it's hard, man, toiling, you know, like just working or, you know, taking care of people or like hearing emotions and feeling so much pain, you know, and that is so much brokenness in this world, that this is a source of opportunity, you know, that there's something different than this, and it can start now, you know, I don't have to wait. Like changing my worldview, coming in line with Jesus can offer me some of that comfort now, you know, and learning how to say no, you know, that self-discipline, the things I always said yes to, now I'm saying no to, and that actually God has a plan for me now too, to give me hope today.